Welcome to What Lies Ahead. I'm your host, Chris Raffini, lead singer of the Long Island band Overthrow. On my podcast, I explore everything related to the hardcore scene through the eyes of artists, promoters, and record labels. As always, please like or subscribe on all social media platforms. Today's guest is Andrew Thorp King, entrepreneur, author, and record label owner. He founded Thorp Records, a label that has worked with some of the most respected names in punk and hardcore. Beyond music, he's built businesses in finance, publishing, and media, and is the author of Failure Rules, a book about learning from setbacks and using them as leverage. Andrew brings a rare blend of creative grit and business insight, and today we'll discuss his journey through failure, reinvention, his Great Cigars podcast, and Soul on Fire Supply Company merch. Andrew, what's going on? Thanks for coming on.
Hey, man, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you on. It's like we were chatting up a little bit prior to this, and it's like you kind of check all the boxes of what, in terms I love talking about on the podcast. And you hit so many different things. Your message is great. So it's hope to hit every single thing here that you do, because you took all of that and that drive that you have, and you've incorporated into so many different things. Before we start, though, I do want to thank Jay from TNF Podcast for connecting us and setting this up. I'm glad we were able to put this together.
Absolutely. Great dude.
Yeah. So let's talk. Let's start from the beginning, actually. So let's talk about your early interest in music, and then kind of, I guess, you built into hardcore and shows, your first show, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, how did I swerve into an interest in hardcore punk? Is that kind of what we're...
Yeah.
So I think from like the earliest age, like music in general, it spoke to me, it moved me, it animated me, it sparked my imagination. And so, like, I mean, I remember being like, I don't know, like 9, like in 3rd grade, like listening to like Maiden and like AC/DC and like, stuff like that, just hard rock, and like going to school with like a denim jacket with patches on it, you know what I mean? And like a chain wallet, like almost dressing like a little biker, you know what I mean? Just a little rocker. So like, that was kind of where I started. Just from like the neighborhood, like older guys, the hoodlums and whatnot. And then it was probably around, I don't know, maybe 7th or 8th grade. And a friend gave me, like a mixtape on cassette. And it was, it had Murphy's Law on there, had like Subhumans, Ruin, had like, even like Sex Pistols, and like just the sound of hardcore punk or just punk in general. And it was just like, whoa, this is a whole nother level. This speaks way more to like the grit and the angst and the energy in my soul and in my mind. And from there, it was just like, the switch just turned, and then I remember like, I don't know, probably like 10th grade or something when I heard Agnostic Front, Victim in Pain. And it was just like between that and the Murphy's Law self-titled, like my gravitation towards the New York hardcore sound really kind of solidified. I mean, I was always into all kinds of, hardcore and punk and the different genres and subgenres, but like the New York hardcore sound, or really like the attitude of like the realism, and it was less about being kind of goofy or pseudo political. And it was more just about like the rawness of like, approaching life with a psychological toughness. And that attracted me to hardcore punk.
Right. Like the reality, it's real. Right. And it's. Do you remember your first show?
I don't remember the exact first show, but the first like memorable show, the first noteworthy show was 1989 at the Revival in Philly. And it was Bad Brains, Leeway, and some opening band named Throttle. So Bad Brains and Leeway, 1989. Yeah, nice. That was a banger of a show when you're, in 10th grade.
Not bad. Not bad of a lineup. So do you remember at that point, because you obviously have a very go-getter personality, right? You're involved in a lot of different aspects. You write about it in your book, right? You're like, you said yourself, you've started and you've failed with more businesses than you could even remember to lead you where
right.
where you built where you are today, and
fire aim, baby. Ready, fire aim. That's right.
Yeah, right. Which is such to me, an important message, which we were talking about. I think you just keep moving forward and you keep going. So I guess where the first part, what I'll start with is the label, a little bit. And that came a little bit maybe after all this, obviously. But was that you're going to shows, you're meeting people? When did the idea to come to start a record label? Because you put out some, like I mentioned, some really, really, really great releases, from some classic bands.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it took some grinding to get there, obviously, like it would for anybody. But no, the label just started. I mean, I think really it's just a result of like Graduated college with an English degree after dropping out of student teaching because I realized I didn't want to be a teacher. So I just took an English degree. And so obviously that's a very non-specific, imprecise, hard to navigate degree, right? So I get out of college and didn't know what else to do since I wasn't going to be a teacher. So I went right back to work at the steel plant I was working at and became like a union steel worker and did that for like a year and wanted to challenge myself. So I also did like a bodybuilding competition, ended up competing in that, like even had like my picture in Muscle Fitness. And,
awesome. Another thing, you're super interested in bodybuilding, like lifting and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Just trying different things. And so I just had like this creative impulse and wanted to find a way to like swerve into something that I could monetize that was creative. And, I think like hardcore really was like a big part of my life more and more at that age, like, early 20s, just the angst of trying to like figure out how you're going to fit into the world and like trying to marry money and meaning, right? Like you have to make money. Money's important. You got to survive. But I wanted to do it in such a way that was meaningful to me. And like what really was meaningful to me was my, at the time, my identification with hardcore. I mean, it still is, but to that, like then, like that was like the thing I wanted to like really kind of like turn into some sort of career some way. So I was writing for music magazines. I don't know if you remember Chord magazine back in the day. Yeah. So that was one of the magazines I was writing for. And, he had a label and he did some cool stuff, Candiria. And, I don't even remember what else Met did, but Candiria is one of them.
That's the big one. I remember that one. Yep.
That's the big one. There's a few. And so I was like, fuck it. I went and just started shadowing him. And this is after I had been like, I was just married. I think even my son might have been born. And I was laid off from like a corporate job working for like Ford Credit, being like a bill collector, and like it's kind of like automaton cubicle monkey kind of job, and it was just didn't like it. I wanted to do something else, so I just started shadowing him and learning how he ran his record label, and I just kind of put my balls on the table and like maxed out my credit cards while I was unemployed, delivering pizzas and. Drove to New York and met with Breakdown, Mike DeJean and Jeff Perlin, and signed Breakdown. This is when AJ from Leeway was playing in the band too. And the first release was Battle Hymns of an Angry Planet by Breakdown.
Not a bad
distribution deal through Matt, and love Matt. He's a great dude. Seen him even like in the last couple of years. But there were some issues with the distribution and payment, all kinds of things happened. Like I got into the tumult of the business pretty quickly. And, I couldn't rely on it for income, but I had started a business. I got some momentum. I had revenue, but I also had debt, and it was just like a startup, and then like, I write about in the book. I don't know how far you got into the book, but, there was a moment where I was at a gym one night and ended up meeting this guy, Carl. I won't say his last name, but it turns out he had just moved to the area from Colorado, quit his job as an attorney to go be the VP of Relapse Records. And so it was like this serendipitous kind of chance meeting, over dumbbell curls, you know what I mean? Sweating it out one night. And I was like talking to the guy and telling him about my label and telling him I wanted to get in the music industry. And, within a month or so, emails back and forth and a few interviews, I ended up getting a job running the wholesale department at Relapse Records. And they were just moving from Lancaster, Pennsylvania to Upper Darby, which was close, Upper Darby, PA, which was closer to where I lived, like in the suburbs of Philly. So it was like all just like really just like worked out like it was supposed to be, and so all of a sudden now I had a paid education by day in the music industry to help inform me and learn for what I was doing by night, starting the labels. And so that kind of like vertically integrated kind of situation kicked off.
God, makes sense. So when it led into putting out that first release of the Breakdown record, did you do a lot of research prior to doing this, or you just like, okay, we'll put it out and then from there you figured it out? Or
a little bit like back of the napkin math. How much do I get paid on each copy? How many do I think I'll sell? What is this comparable to in the market in terms of what it might sell? Like, do you think I'll sell 2,000, 5,000? What is the marketing cost? Like all that kind of stuff. And this never really changed as much as I tried to apply formulas to it. Releasing over 100 albums at this point between my two labels, Thorp Records and Sailor's Grave Records. So I've released over 100 records. There really is no formula that really ever pans out the way that you want. Like there's so much gambling and rolling of the dice that exist in this game, right?
Yeah.
Like you're looking at a market that changes its flavor and its whims and who's cool and how much people like them from album to album. And a year or 2 year or 6 month can make so much difference in that. And then the retail landscape, was brutal for years and difficult to navigate. And now you have the digital landscape, which I think is in many ways streamlined, more favorable, obviously to artists, but I think even to labels when labels are actually needed and can be helpful for a band. So nothing, no real like no real like no research that could really give you any sort of certainty.
Right.
But that didn't exist. I mean, even after working for Relapse Records, seeing through some of the tumult they went through, periods where they were hundreds of $1,000s in debt and had to figure out ways to get out of it. Or when I worked for Lumberjack Distribution, which was later owned by had a deal with Warner and merged with Mortem Distribution. They distributed labels like Death Wish and Bridge 9 and Trustkill and Ferret and Eyeball Records, who did the first Thursday record, and like I saw the guts, the inside, the sausage being made for distributors, the record labels, the whole thing. Like certain people obviously had success and did it better than others, but everybody had problems. Everybody had issues, and nobody had a fucking crystal ball. Nobody could really predict the future. You know what I mean? So like it was a labor of love and a daring labor of love at that. For everybody fucking involved.
Right. Yeah. So when you had different experiences with Relapse, everything with your label. Was at any point, because you were running a label at the same time, was there any point that you ever thought in a label you wanted to pivot into maybe more of, I don't know, the marketing side of it or other side of it, or you kind of liked what you were doing in terms of where you were with the label when you were running it?
So do you mean like just leaving running my label and then specializing in the music industry into one sort
Yeah, and maybe something specific that
well, that's the other direction.
you saw, because you had a lot of different cool experiences with this. So
yeah. Well, I kind of went the other direction, right? Like I was running a wholesale department for Relapse, and I was the top salesman at Lumberjack Distribution, so I was always in sales and distro side of it either way. And then I took that specialization and I broadened it out, running a label, obviously, then managing every piece of the life cycle, putting out a record, right? But at the time, by the time that I stopped doing the labels full time and pivoted to doing part time again, it really became an accent. A background activity, a side hustle, and I didn't really have any desire to swerve back into it full time in any capacity, whether as an entrepreneur or as an employee.
So quickly with the label at the time when you were bringing in bands and artists, because you said you've released close to 100 releases. Was there ever bands that you were eyeing? I would like to do this one. Like you'd go out, see a show, scout, watch, play. Bands that maybe came to you that surprised you. You're like, didn't think of this, wasn't on my radar, and then you ended up putting it out. How did it work out when you were looking at grabbing artists to put out records?
I mean, I was pretty aggressive early on, reaching out to bands and networking, and it really worked out that once you kind of got one band that was happy with you, if they had 5 other bands they're friends with, they were sending them your way, and you could take it or leave it, right, most of the time, but you kind of built these clusters of network bands regionally or whatever it might be. I mean, like I think of like the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. I had like Striking Distance, had Down to Nothing, I had Dead Serious, all these kind of bands, in that area at the time, the early 2000s. And then like, I think about the Boston punk rock scene, like kind of nestled in there when I did like Blood for Blood and the Ducky Boys, then Kings of Nothing, and this band, the Welch Boys, and then there's all these like kind of Boston oriented bands, you know what I mean? And like the New York scene, like did the Madball EP, and then ended up doing Ironbound NYC. Shout out to Tommaso, who unfortunately just passed away last week, so rest in power. But he was in that band, and like the guys from Sick of It All were also on that project. And like there was just people kind of recommended their friends to me as a label. I was also going after bands too, of course, but it just over time it just built up, and it wasn't hard to have a variety of bands to consider.
Right. So you would, doing that now. At the same time, were you looking at, because you said it was like full time, then it was like a side hustle. So in between all that, were you looking at other avenues in terms of, because you, again, like I said, go getter, entrepreneurial, like you were looking at other things like businesses, jobs, all that kind of stuff. So I know it's kind of scattered, but let's talk about when the label. Did you decide to make it more part time so you can maybe venture on into other things? Um, or was it just you felt like, okay, I've done enough as what I could do here with the label full time. We'll go part time with what I'm doing here, and then I could go on looking into other aspects of business and entrepreneurial aspect.
I wish it was that smart and that smooth and that logical and rational, but hell no, it wasn't
Right.
anything like that. It was like, I was running way too fast, releasing probably between the two labels like 20 records a year, and only a handful of them, really like a couple, ended up having a positive P&L. Even ones that sold really, really well, I ended up overspending just to try to like blow them up. And in particular, um, I released a Ramallah record, Kill a Celebrity, and a Drowning Man record at the same time, and it was running like, MTV ads and full marketing campaign, and overspent, overshipped, and lost a lot of money on them. Like initially, it was around the time also that you had the shift from physical to digital was starting to really
Okay.
um, take root, and like Tower Records was a big chain, and they were like probably 20-25% of my sales. They went under. So not only did I have less sales, less avenues to put records on the shelf, but then they were returning product, which came with extra fees attendant to each unit. And I was over leveraged. I got in a bad situation. I got over my head. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
I had to pull back just because of money and debt, and just kind of put things on ice for a while and let things recoup and lay off, kind of the staff that I did have. And that's when I was like, got to go find another avenue to make a core living.
Mhm.
But the labels were still there, right? And then, um, over time began releasing records, again, pretty consistently, a flurry of them in 2009. And then Sailor's Grave became more active and more of the main thing. It was doing better and found a better, more consistent niche market within the, psychobilly, oi, street punk kind of flavors.
Mhm. Now, did you see this happening, or did all this what you were describing? You said like, as you hit some debt with this, and like you had to unfortunately lay off some people with it. Did this happen, or did it happen so fast where you're like, holy shit, I have to lay off some people here. I got to kind of step back from this a little bit, um, or
It happened. It was like, it's like the old saying. It's like gradually, then suddenly. You know what I mean? Like it
yeah,
was happening, and I knew it was happening, but I didn't know the gravity or the magnitude or
what it
the
was.
unintended kind of velocity of it until it really started unraveling. And you're always just trying to get like at least like cover the next couple steps, like,
Mhm.
oh, I find a way to get enough money to put out this next record. And oh, I have money coming in for this record. That'll cover this hole for this month. But it was always kind of like, you know, barely breathing kind of thing, but
Yeah.
still like powered by like this enthusiasm. And at the time, I mean, the thing that really like made it intense was I was doing it full time. I had a an office downtown Toledo, Ohio. I quit my job working for Lumberjack Mortem and went for it full time, and it was a couple years. But as soon as I kind of jumped off that cliff and accelerated, and then got over leverage, and then things kind of went haywire. That's when it just, at a certain point, like the music stopped, right? And I had to
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
all right, what's salvageable here? What can I do? How do I pivot? How do I move forward just personally and with my family? And then, you know, have something still trailing here.
Mhm. And you always are, like I said, a person who moves forward. It's like, you say that in the book with, I guess we'll get into the book now, like with
Sure.
failure rules, because, you walk through 5 essential kind of rules to help people pull themselves out of any failure that they could be in, whether it's financially, whether it's mental health. I mean, it kind of covers a lot of it, because, when you're going through failure, it's going to affect your mental health. It just is, like with whatever
100%.
that
Yeah.
failure is, right? So when did the idea and again, and I know I'm probably jumping around a bit from the label to this, but I'm trying to,
Sure.
there's like important pillars of things I want to discuss because there's some major things here. And the book is one of them because it's great.
Really
So
are.
when did the idea of I'm going to do a book, come to fruition in your mind to like, and then, okay, there's one thing to say you're going to do a book, but then there's another thing to actually do it, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of work that you're probably doing that. So
Yeah.
how did that come about for Failure Rules?
Yeah. So it was, hell, I guess it was like 2013. Specifically, it was like Father's Day. And I was with my first wife, and we were, had all, we were on the precipice of divorce. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know that we actually knew it then, but we were, right? Um, and I remember taking a beach walk, and at the time I had owned a fitness center and was partners in an online lending business with the same business partner, and they were connected financially in a lot of ways. And my partner had made some mistakes in the past in the mortgage business, ended up having to go to prison. And when he went to prison, I was left running both businesses and doing the investor relations, and there was problems. So at some point, I ended up stepping down from. I had to close down the gym and step down from the online lending business, and so I was in the middle of like a transition. I still had some other income sources, but it was now diminished, and I had to rearrange things and find my next my way forward. And so there was like kind of like this financial tumult there, like in a business divorce, and I'm on the precipice of a marital divorce. And I was just thinking through all. I was taking this beach walk at the Jersey Shore, and I'm thinking through all the things that I had tried, and like kind of like all the passions that had burned in me, all the things I went after, all the lessons I had learned, and like was thinking of the Winston Churchill quote, which is success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And like that was me. Like I hadn't lost any enthusiasm. Like no matter what you threw my way, I was going to pivot, roll, fucking dodge. I was going to find a way to keep going. And so I was like, I really need to write this stuff down. Not just my own experiences, but who were like what was the inspirations? What were the kind of like inputs? The virtual mentors that really kind of got me through, and catalog this stuff. So I made some loose notes that day, and like when this all happened, I'm like listening to this playlist, and I remember listening to like Motorhead, Ace of Spades, and like Hatebreed songs, Divinity of Purpose, and Cro-Mag's Hard Times, and like music obviously was a big part of like the motivation constructs within me and the resilience constructs within me. And so I just decided like I was going to write this book, and originally I was going to call it Celebration of Failure, and then eventually change like Failure Rules with the exclamation mark, kind of like a nod to the loud fast rules kind of titling.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
You get in front of a
Computer.
or I'm gonna let's date us, right? A typewriter. No, you get in front of a computer, you start writing, or you jotting notes down on your phone. And does it keep flowing from there in terms of the ideas that you have? And sorry, part I guess B of the question is because I'm like it's like because I think it's so fascinating how you put together a book because the book it's got a lot of stuff in it. You have a lot of experiences. Did you know the order in terms of how you wanted it, and were there things that made you sit back and look at that you're like, wow, I forgot about that needs to go in there kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say I didn't exactly know the order. I was writing ideas down on sticky notes and just throwing them in a cigar box as they came to me. And then it was like open the cigar box, the empty cigar box, and just start like brainstorming from what was in there. And it was everything from like phraseology to like personal experiences to connections and inputs and quotes from other people. And I just started writing. It was just like a dump, almost like a data dump. Just get it out. And there wasn't a particular order. And that was draft one, and that was like 2014. I probably dumped maybe 60,000 words ish over the course of that year. And it was the raw stuff, a lot of it was the raw personal stuff. And some of the more like structured case study stuff, but mostly the raw personal stuff. And then like I let it rest. not even really on purpose, just life took root. And I was pivoting to like write another book. At the time, but I was releasing a spy novel, so I was getting that out. But I already wrote draft one of Failure Rules, and so I went back to it maybe a couple years later, and it was better because my perception of the topic and the subject matter matured, and I had more to layer in and add. Like I think of like the Beastie Boys when they were making Paul's Boutique. They talk about layering. You know what I mean? Like they just like did one layer, then they go fucking skateboard for 2 days and play basketball, then they come back, and then another layer would just peel off them very easily because they had time for the art to rest, for them to come back and just like, you know, weave right back into it with a new perspective. And that's kind of how the book was. And really it took like, I don't know, I guess like 8 years, I think, of various drafts and, not touching for a year or two, then going back to it. And then it was really COVID where like I was locked down and I dug back into the manuscript. And it's like at the time I was living in South Philly and I'd just be like on a Saturday, just light up a cigar, have an Irish coffee, be in my robe, fucking nothing underneath it, my fucking robe, just sitting on the porch, blasting music all day and just bang out thousands of words. Mm-hmm. And like I just got this flow state during COVID, and that's when I finished the book. But then I had to go back with the publisher, Scribe Media, Lioncrest Publishing, and had a team of editors who had worked at all the big publishing houses, and they had eyes on it, and they really helped me restructure it, draw out like the sequencing, the flow, the lessons that you see at the top of each chapter. Make sure each chapter rolled up and anchored to each. Each lesson and chapter rolled up nicely to each part of the book or each rule of the book. So they really helped me with the sequencing and the flow and kind of making it all very digestible.
Yeah. So with that was actually my next part I want to talk about when you worked with the publisher. So was that, I guess, ideas that you didn't think of, or not, you maybe didn't think of, but maybe more along the lines of you're so into the writing part of it and getting everything complete and making sure everything's in there that maybe you weren't, that part you were not maybe thinking of because you were just trying to get the writing piece of it down. And did you, when you sent it to the publisher, did you think that it was done or that there was going to be revisions with it?
Oh, I knew there'd be revisions. That was part of what I hired them for.
Right. Okay.
I knew that the editing process would take a year or more. And it did. And it was amazing. I mean, I think what was a good book to be a great book. They really helped bring the best out of me. I had already, self-edited and done a lot of rewrites on my own. And I had come to a structure, a 5-part structure, wrapped up with the rules.
Right.
And I had come up with like, each chapter was, constructed in a way where there's this formula where, there's this kind of overriding thesis and idea, an anchor quote from some sort of virtual mentor or someone, noteworthy, whether it's an investor or whether it's an artist or, whoever it was, quoting everybody from Stephen Colbert to Gene Simmons in there. So it's like, it's all over the place, but, and then also, so it was like, personal anecdote, case study, all backing up a thesis. Each thesis for each chapter was kind of like subordinate and rolled up to the overarching rule, right? Whether it was, failure rule number 1, failure purifies, failure rule number 2, nothing is safe, and so on and so on and so on. But when I sent it into the publisher, they just enhanced that. And they just filled in the gaps and made it flow even better. I turned it in at 100,000 words. And most books of this genre usually clock in around 60 to 80,000. So it was already long. I thought they were going to tell me to cut a bunch. They came back and prompted me to write 20,000 more words. So it ended up being 120,000 words, which is not normal.
Mm-hmm. So when they said that, did you like, okay, I got a little more I could write about?
Oh, yeah, no problem. But I was like, really? You don't want me to cut a bunch of stuff? Like editors usually slash, like kill your darlings. They fucking do. They don't usually come back and say, yeah, this is so good, write more, but they did.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
It's a good call, though. It worked itself out that you were able to add stuff.
Yeah, so, I was worried about the length, but most of the readers have been like, no, it's an easy read.
It is an easy read.
And they were also like, I could pick up any chapter and read it. And it has a beginning, middle, and end, and it's standard. Like you can snack on it. You don't have to write it, read it sequentially end to end, and still, is can be impactful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good thing. So you were working on it close to a decade almost, right? Give or take. So
Oh yeah,
Did
and then 2 and a
did
half years of promoting it. Yeah,
Yeah, 2.5, which is amazing. So it's still talking about we're still talking about it today, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's part of who you are. So did writing the book in any way, shape, or form, or while you were writing, change the way you viewed your own failures and wins?
Oh yeah. I mean, the whole thing was, a process of introspection, self-analysis, confessional, redemptive, and also like, reconstructive. Like it built me back up. Like it put closure on a lot of things, and kind of gave me like the proper framing and story around my life that like really in the end just gave me like so much gratitude to be able to see like, oh, after I put it all down, oh, this led to that, and this led to that, and because of this, my mindset changed this way, and this relationship came into view, and this opportunity came into view because of that, and just seeing the whole tapestry laid out the way that I was able to do in the book. It was a big process of self discovery and you know what? Self validation in the end. Like, yeah,
Mm,
this was my path. I own it. It was pretty awesome. It was brutal a lot of times. And there's some tough stuff in there, but like, man, it really made me someone that I'm happy to be. Like, I like who I am as a result of this story that my
mhm.
life, was or
Yeah.
is.
Now, look, this is about the book, but I think in general of what you do, you speak to these things. What do you find like the difference between productive failure and then just making bad decisions?
Well,
So,
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Right. So, like, I say in the book, like, I think the beginning line was something like, okay, I lied. Failure doesn't actually rule. Failure sucks. And I'm basically saying, like, yeah, obviously failure sucks before it can rule. But the challenge is make it productive. Like,
mm,
step outside of that failure, have kind of like a third party objective perch on your own life, and look at the rubble and figure out, okay, what can I do to reinvent and take this information and turn it into something that is productive in my next steps, in the next version of myself, in my next, whatever, next opportunities. And so, yeah, obviously, like it takes an engagement and interaction with your failure events and a detachment to turn around and make them something that is great, right? And obviously I go through so many case studies in the book where like so many people, their failures ended up being like that crucible and that turning point that they point to as being the impetus for what eventually made them successful or unique or great in some way.
right, right. Super reflective too with it. And it does. And when you're reading it, for those who haven't yet, if you haven't read it yet, but if for those who, when you read it, you personalize and self-reflect, which is good because at any point, anybody can benefit from something like that, in my opinion. So what has
But
been
the,
some
the net of your question is obviously self-indulgent failure just for the sake of it is fucking stupid. So don't do it.
yeah, yeah. What's been some of the most surprising reactions you've gotten from the book or reactions from people, after some readers that people have reached out to you?
Um, what's interesting to me is just the wide array of people that it's actually apparently been relatable to, right? Like I obviously have some niche interest, kind of the hardcore punk angle, the entrepreneur thing. Not everybody's an entrepreneur. Not everybody's a cigar smoker, and that's kind of laced throughout the book. My interest in cigar culture and loving cigars, and going through some case studies of some prominent people in the cigar world. Um, but somehow, like, people from all walks of life, non-entrepreneurs or people that aren't into the music, have really related to this, because I think broadly, even though I niche down a lot in terms of like the case study people that I choose and my own interests, like it's still a very broad topic that people can relate to, right? So even if I'm going through a story about an entrepreneurial failure, people can still relate it to maybe a failure they had, within the corporate environment, or a
Mm,
personal failure they had, where the lesson still applies. And Yeah, so I think just the broad amount of people that the book has resonated with has been, curious, and has been a cool thing to see.
cool. So a couple other things in terms of like what like the Great Cigars podcast, your merch company. But I do want to ask you one thing as we kind of tail end into, with the book Failure Rules that you can get on Amazon, by the way, as you're
Yep.
listening to it.
Failure rules. Five
Yeah.
rules of failure.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs, creatives, and authentics.
Yeah.
Available.
Are there any failures that you look back on that you're grateful for, but maybe couldn't appreciate in the moment? You know, some people listening to this like, what is he talking about? But
Yeah.
sometimes, like you said, you actually have said that. You just actually basically said that almost in a way. It's like you take that and you grow from it. But is there any or a couple that you could see that maybe led you to something, or taught you something that has improved how you're living your life now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm grateful for all of them in some way. There is a sense too, like that some of them, even though I'm grateful for them, I kind of wish didn't happen because some of their negative outputs still are things that have effects today that are, you know, troublesome and need to be dealt with. But net, I mean, I'm grateful for all of them. But I mean, I could just think, you know, just for example, um, the online lending company that I was partner in, like there was a lot of risks that my partner and I took, and ultimately it ended up, you know, going away, or I walked away from it. It still survived for a little bit without me, but then eventually failed. Um, but had I not taken some of those risks, which led to a lot of tumult and a lot of pain and a lot of division and a lot of chaos, but had I not taken some of those risks, I wouldn't have gotten the experience to even embed in a resume that eventually got me the job I have today, where
Mm,
I'm a, you know, a fintech banker, financial technology. You know, work for a bank that serves a lot of fintech companies, kind of, you know, the different cool payment apps, whether it's Cash App or PayPal or those type of companies. And I wouldn't have got the job I had today if I didn't take the risks that we did to earn the skills that I was able to embed in the resume that got me this job. Right. So it was like, you know, I've got an amazing job where I've been promoted twice. I'm an officer of a publicly traded bank. You know, I can't really mention or talk about, but, um, and, you know, and it was because of those risks that ultimately led to failure, but it wouldn't happen without that, you
mm,
know? Whereas other people, you know, they get the job through going through education and building their resume and skills that way. I got a different type of education. I had to have my partner go to jail and run things by myself and chase down investors and hire consultants and do things in a different kind of gritty off-road way.
mhm. Your mentality, like I said, is just keep moving, keep moving.
Yeah.
That's what, you know, that's what comes across the book. But
Yep.
how do you stay grounded? You know, and did you stay grounded, and kind of pick yourself back up again? It's like, okay, you know, when things were getting overwhelming and it didn't feel maybe as if, all right, this is not really working out with this in
Yeah.
terms of this job or this other aspect of business that I'm involved in.
Yeah. I mean, it was tough. I mean, obviously there's times where I hit really, really low points, but for me, like, you know, there's a variety of things that always work for me to accelerate good times and to get me out of bad times. And, you know, it's weightlifting. That's a constant. That keeps my mind calibrated, my body strong, you know, strong body, strong mind. That works for me. No matter what is going on in my life, that has to happen. Music, that has to be a part of my life. I always have a soundtrack for whatever season I'm going through. You know,
Mm,
and in fact, obviously in the book at the end, there's a whole description of the soundtrack to Failure Rules that you can find on Spotify of all the songs that I actually listened to that got me through these hard times, or songs I listened to while I was writing the book that inspired me, you know.
mhm,
So music, weightlifting, spirituality, you know, just a core belief in the transcendent, that there's things I don't see that are being worked out on my behalf, that I need to trust in, particularly when I can't see them and everything feels like it's fucked up and it's never going to be repaired. You know, so this sense of the transcendence. Um, so I think they're probably the main things. And just, you know, having good friends around me, and even like, you know, this kind of tags back to the transcendence thing a little bit, but just like being very nimble and kind of non-attached and having a reinvention mindset. Like, I'm not attached to a specific pursuit. I'm not attached to a specific identity to pursuit. Like, I don't have to be the record label guy. I don't have to be the gym guy. I don't have to be the banker. I don't have to be any of these things. I can change at any moment, and I'm totally fine with shape shifting into some new pursuit and expanding my identity and evolving. So I don't ever feel married to a particular identity. And so
mhm.
that gives you a lot of freedom and failure to like move up and down or across, you know, different areas of your life.
Sure, absolutely. So I guess let's talk a little about. We'll go into the merch company for a little bit, the Soul on Fire Supply. So When did that start? How did that go about? You have some cool shirts that you have available. Like when did you connect with anyone to do that? Is that just you doing that? How does that work?
Yeah. So that's just an outgrowth of the book, Failure Rules. So I
Hmm.
wanted to take some of the themes of the book and just have a merch line with it to sell along with the book. And I do a lot of I haven't done many lately, but at the height of promoting the book, did a lot of book signings at cigar events. So I also have like a cigar line of Soul on Fire with different cool cigar designs. Um, And so most of the non-cigar designs were done by Pete McAfee, who did the cover art for Dropkick Murphys, for Social Distortion, for Hank the Third, for Black Sabbath. Did a lot of great like rock art, and he did a lot of those designs. And then the cigar designs specifically were done by Craig Holloway, who's in the band Cold as Life, and
Hmm.
he did he's done designs for all kinds of bands, everybody from Wisdom in Chains to Agnostic Front to Nuclear Assault. So, yeah, I still tapped into the hardcore artists to get these designs done.
Just
So,
come home, right? Sometimes, right? When you
yeah,
when you do that. Nah, it's cool. And they're cool shirts and stuff like that. So let's, too, because you're getting into cigars. Like, obviously, that's a big thing. You're into it. But you have the podcast. How long is that podcast? Great Cigars podcast been going?
yeah. So that's actually my friend Jimmy's podcast, but I'm like a co-host
Yeah.
enough. I say I'm a co-host on it because I'm a regular enough. Um, so he started that 9 years ago, and he's actually become like a pretty, he's kind of risen up as a media figure in the cigar world, and gets a lot of great interviews with cigar personalities and has a good listenership around the world. And him and I are tight. He lives where I live in Delaware County, outside of Philly, which has been popularized by the show. What was it called? The one HBO show is about Delco.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so yeah, that's just been a fun thing that I do, but it's cool because it still intersects with music because he's more into metal than hardcore, but we talk about intersections of music and cigars and bodybuilding and all the things that we're interested in. So it's a fun time, and I've gone to like the cigar. They have the PCA, the Premium Cigar Association event every year, and I went to one of them and had a booth and sold Soul on Fire merch, sold a bunch of books, and kind of embedded myself a little bit into that too. So, the cigar world was definitely a piece of the promotion of the book.
Hmm. I meant to ask you this in the beginning, but how did your started going? You said 10th grade, was it, give or take? Um, your background with punk and hardcore. Um, help you or influence you in terms of becoming an entrepreneur, in terms of setting up different businesses and stuff like that? Did anything that you take from the hardcore scene, obviously you had a label and you put out hardcore bands, but
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, what you took from the hardcore scene and that mindset into what you're doing today,
Mhm.
almost to an extent.
Yeah, it's the DIY ethic, man. I mean, think about hardcore punk bands. Oh, you don't want to sign my band? Fuck it. I'm going to put it out myself. I'm going to find a way. That's entrepreneurialism 101. That's like not taking no for an answer, and having that like punk rock circumvention kind of energy and just going to go find a way. You're going to just go find four friends. You're going to start a band. If nobody wants to put out your record, you're going to find a way to get it out. And so, like, I just took that energy to life. Like, oh, I'm not making enough money at my job. I can't get a job that makes that pays me enough money. I'm going to find a way to go start a business to make that extra money. I'm going to do whatever I have to do, and I'm not going to wait for a gatekeeper to say yes to me. You
Mhm.
know, I'm just going to go cobble together skills and people to help me along the way and make this shit happen. So to me, entrepreneurialism is one of the most, you know, punk rock kind of ways of being that there is.
Agreed.
Most of them know it or not.
Yeah, and you could hit so many different aspects of it, like you have.
Yeah.
Um, so, what's the future hold for you? What are you thinking moving forward? Is another idea for another book? Are you, because you're always looking at doing new
Yeah.
things. You don't seem like someone that's stagnant, and you keep
Yeah.
it moving. So,
Yeah. So, kind of been in a holding period the last 4 or 5 months. Downsized, sold my house, moved to a new town, getting reset up in my new place, but been thinking about my next move. So I think at the end of last year, I finished taking this online course to help me build a speaking business around the topics and failure rules.
hmm,
Go get paid at corporate events and associations and that type of thing. So I haven't done anything yet with that template or what I learned from that course, but that's going to happen at some point soon. I just engaged with a publicist to do another round of podcast appearances promoting failure rules. And I started an outline for a new book. And before the end of the year, I'm likely going to launch my own podcast, right? So that's probably going to rise to be the next biggest passion. Because after being on like whatever over 75 podcasts and meeting a bunch of different people, it's like now I kind of want to do my own and highlight all the different people from a wide array of spaces and interest that I want to amplify. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably going to be the next big focus here, along with the other stuff.
The idea of the book, is it something, do you have an idea? I mean, do you have an idea in mind when you want it completed, or you're just doing what you did with the failure rules? You just, when it's done, like there's no rush for you, right?
There's no rush, but I don't want it to take that long because there's no need, because I kind of have a formula now and I know how to write things in a more structured way intentionally up front. So they shouldn't take as long. And so I think within 2 to 3 years, I should get this one done once I get started in earnest. I have outline done, but once I actually start writing, I don't think it'll take too long, and it'll be half the size of Failure Rules. I'm going to try to keep within that 60,000 word kind of parameters that is typical for books in this, in the nonfiction genre. So so I think within 2 to 3 years, and this one's going to be actually more specific. I won't give away the title, but it's going to be more around finance. Like this is going to be almost like it's going to be a finance book. It'll still have punk rock energy, but it's going to be a finance book. You know what I mean?
Cool. That's great. And your podcast, have you been thinking about doing it where it's just social media platforms, where it's audio, or you're thinking of doing the live? Like Jay from TNF, he does the live YouTube, or you haven't got there yet with that?
I don't think I'll do live, at least not right away. But I definitely will be doing video too. It won't just be audio. Like it'll definitely be video too. So it'll be video and audio, and it will be not specific to Failure Rules. It'll be a more broader titling, and it'll incorporate kind of all the different spaces that are touched in Failure Rules. I mean, obviously, like I'm quoting economists, and I'm quoting hardcore guys, and I'm quoting actors, and I'm quoting Jack Kerouac. It's gonna basically be really kind of going after those that have a soul on fire, those that bring a very unique, unorthodox energy to life and do it in a very,
cool,
noteworthy way.
Cool. You talk about the new book. So is your process a little different now? Because do you set certain days to write this new book where you're like, okay, making it up, Tuesday to Thursday, I have to at least get something done within the outline? Do you have like a goal in mind to what you want done? Let's say by, we're recording this, it's late August. This is going to come out in late September. By December, do you have a goal in mind? Like, okay, I need this at least done for the book.
Once I start writing in earnest, I will break it down in word counts and words accomplished per month. Right. So try to keep the chapters no more than 1,500 words. Say to myself, I want to do, whatever I say, 6,000 words a month. That gives me 4 chapters a month. There's 48 chapters in the book. It's going to be done, first draft in a year or so. And that's extremely doable. Like 1,500 words a week for me is not hard. That's 1 chapter a week. When I already have the outline, already have the ingredients, it's not hard to cook that up. And so I'll put it into a very manageable but structured pace. My process has definitely gotten more refined and more predictable.
Right. Well, you learned, right? You learned from
in terms of execution, predictable.
In terms of getting it done. So last question here, then I have a bunch of questions of first thing that comes to mind. So this is my last real question. Has your thinking around failure changed or evolved since the publishing of the book?
I mean, I'm definitely more focused on avoiding it than I was, for the first 40, the first 20 years of my adult life, from my 20s and 30s. But I'm still taking risks. It's just a little more calculated because failure does suck before it can ever rule, and I prefer to not have failure. So I think I'm a little more careful now, but I still take risks, man. I still chase everything that burns inside me because I don't want to have future regret. I don't want to be on my deathbed and say, oh, I should have tried this. I should have went after that. I should have started this. Like, I'd rather have something be pursued and failed than to never have pursued it, to regret never done it. So
right. Yeah, absolutely.
That's how I live.
So a few questions here. First thing that comes to mind, music related. There's no semblance of order. You'll see when I'm sending
Yeah,
them
yeah.
to you. If you want to elaborate, of course you can. Um, what are your top 3 albums of all time? Doesn't have to be hardcore too. Like the most influential ones for you.
Ooh, albums. Usually people say bands. You say specific albums.
Specific, yes.
Um, Social Distortion, White Light, White Heat, White Trash.
Hmm.
Um, I gotta say, the Madball people probably argue over this, but Madball, Hold It Down. You know,
That's a great album.
Dropkick Murphys, Do or Die.
Mhm.
Um, that's 3, so I guess I have to stop, right?
If you had another one, you could add it. Should.
One more. Let's just say everything Motorhead ever did. So,
Cool.
yeah, yeah.
The favorite show you've ever been to?
Favorite show I've ever been to. There's been so many great ones. I'm not going to say anything specific, but I will say like the late '90s era of shows at the First Unitarian Church in Philadelphia. They were some of my best memories, and a
That's a
lot of
cool spot.
a lot of those shows were H2O or VOD, Floor Punch, those bands. That was just such a fun era of some of those bands being young back then and coming up and making a mark. So I would just say that era instead of a specific show. But yeah.
Your favorite release that you've put out? Now you have
Whew.
100, so it might not be easy, but one that sticks out. You're like, wow, yeah, this one's proud of this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. There's many, but one of the ones that has really been a banger and has really persisted in its popularity is the Coffin Cats, Our Way and the Highway.
Hmm. Cool.
Psychobilly band from Detroit.
Your favorite venue to go see a show?
This is dating myself, but again, it'd be back in the day, First Unitarian Church in Philly and the Trocadero in Philly.
Doc. What did you listen to last? And not if you were in the store and like elevator music was on. Like, what did you personally put on and you were listening to last?
Really? Okay. Well, it wasn't hardcore. It was Thelonious Monk today while I was doing work. So
Cool.
Thelonious Monk. And prior to that, I think I listened to Mind Force yesterday.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
A band that you like that band or artist that you like that may surprise people.
Like a guilty pleasure outside the hardcore genre. Is that what we're talking about here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like Zach Bryan. That's probably heretical in the hardcore scene, but I like Zach Bryan.
Like Brian. The last book that you read?
Last book that I read. I read so many different books. I think the last one that I read was a Ryan Holiday book, Discipline is Destiny. Yeah.
Cool. Some new bands you like?
I like a lot of these new bands. Buggin' is really good. I just mentioned Mind Force. I like them.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? I would say Mind Force, Buggin'. Pain of Truth is really good. I like them.
They're great. From Long Island, from over here. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, love Pain of Truth. Ended is good. Yeah, off the top of my head.
Cool.
Band.
Yeah. All right, a couple of albums here. You mentioned one from the band here, but Set It Off or Demonstrating My Style. 2 classics.
Yeah, Set It Off.
Set It Off. Haper, you talked about before. Satisfaction or Perseverance?
Again, might be blasphemous, but Perseverance. That record changed my fucking life in 2000.
That's a great record. It
my fucking life. I still listen to it today. That's like Break Glass in Case of Emergency record. If there's something really chaotic on my life, something crazy, and I really need to like that get through it energy, man, I bust out Perseverance.
All day. Right? Last one here, and I think it could kind of sum up really a lot of stuff in your book and also like how you a lot of what you speak to here. But what is your advice you'd give to yourself as a teenager?
Yeah, and I think I didn't develop this until later, but really, it's be nimble. Don't attach yourself too much to one identity. Make reinvention your utmost skill, um, and always be curious and keep moving forward.
Awesome, man. Andrew, thank you so much. Do you have anything you want to end with before we end off here?
Nah, man, just tell people if any of this piques your interest, go check out the book, Failure Rules, The Five Rules of Failure for Entrepreneurs, Creatives, and Authentics. It's available in all formats, anywhere you find books online. So ebook, audiobook, everything. So go check that out. And if you're inclined to check out some good old hardcore, go check out the Thorp Records catalog on Spotify or Apple Music.
Awesome. Andrew, thank you so much. I'm just going to end this off here. Then when we're finished up, we'll chat up. Okay. Thank you for listening to What Lies Ahead podcast, which is available on all streaming platforms. Go save the What Lies Ahead podcast playlist on Spotify that features bands that were on the show. For more information on future episodes, you can go to my Instagram account and follow at What Lies Ahead _podcast and on Facebook by searching What Lies Ahead. See you on the next episode.